Welcome to A Taste of Trinity. My name is Dr. Mike Reynolds. I'm an associate professor in Christian ministries at Trinity International University. And today we're going to be looking at the topic of ethics, in particular, Christian ethics. We're going to be talking about what's wrong and what's right. And today I've brought on the show with me a friend of mine, Dr. John Feinberg. He has an MA, a Master of Divinity, and also a PhD in philosophy from the University of Chicago. He's going to come and help us work through and navigate through the subject matters that we have to talk about today, about right and wrong. Would you please welcome one of my good friends, John Feinberg. John.
Mike, great to be with you today.
I'm glad you're with me to discuss this important issue that we have.
You bet.
You know, there's a lot to come to the table from when we're a time that we're a kid and a small child. We've been told what's right and what's wrong. But behind it are a lot of questions about how do we come to those conclusions. Please share with the audience a way that we can discuss about what's right and wrong and what's that issue about right and wrong.
Well, probably the way most of us began to learn our ethics when we were in the home is mom and dad told us what the rules were. And so we had to obey, and we knew if we would, things would go well, and if we didn't, there would be some sort of punishment. And early on in life, we probably didn't do a lot of questioning about whether the rules were the right ones or wrong ones. Those kind of questions didn't even come up in our thinking.
Not in my house.
But as you grow up, you begin to ask yourself, as well as your parents, well, now, why do we have to do this? Or why can't we do that? Especially when we see that other friends of ours are getting to do any number of things. And it's at that point that you begin to hear from your parents, if you are raised in a Christian home, well, we don't want you to do that because Christians just don't do those sort of things. Well, then you say, well, why is it that Christians don't do those sort of things? Well, because the Bible forbids it. Oh, so I'm supposed to follow rules that are set forth in Scripture. And that's oftentimes when we begin to fully understand where we get our ethical rules from. And we also begin to see in conversations with our friends that they have a set of ethical rules that they live by, but they didn't get them from the Bible.
And, you know, if we struggle with that, and we struggle with this definition about what you find is right and what I find is right, I hear you saying that part of that struggle gets finalized by looking at the biblical text and seeing what it has to tell us and seeing what it says.
Well, yes, for a Christian, that should always be the ultimate touchstone for any issue in life, whether it's our conduct, whether it's what we believe. But more and more in our culture, we are in the minority because people are determining what's right and wrong on other bases than an appeal to Scripture. And in fact, it's in the area of ethical theory where we ask questions like, well, how do I know whether an action is morally right or morally wrong? And once you begin to look at some of the answers that have been given to that, you realize that not everybody agrees on how you can tell what's right and what's wrong. And it's at that point that you begin to see there are different approaches to ethics. It's not just that people, their behavior differs from us, but they actually think different than we do about these topics.
Wow, this again, as I was saying right from the beginning, is the kind of subject that we really need to be looking into, discussing and talking about out loud. What are the kind of issues that come to the table when we make this practical in everyday life about wrong and right? People are struggling with issues of abortion. They're not clear on the issues of abortion. And then if I get older and I'd like to terminate my life, or a doctor would like to assist me in doing that, what becomes the problem with that? And how do we begin to find the biblical text answers to issues of life and death, like abortion and like euthanasia?
Well, those are great questions that you've asked, Mike. And as I was saying a few moments ago, the answers will ultimately go back to your theories about how you determine what's right and wrong. A large group of people believe that you look at the consequences or the results of action, and if you get the results that you are hoping to get, well, then that makes what you did or what you're going to do morally right. Other people say, well, no, something other than the results or the consequences are what makes an action morally right or wrong. For example, what makes an action right or wrong is that God commands it through Scripture. Or perhaps another theory would say it's the most rational thing to do. Whatever the approach is, the two basic approaches are going to be the one that says the results determine whether you act morally or immorally, whether the action is right or wrong. And the other approach says something other than the consequences or the results is what makes an action right or wrong.
John, thank you. That raises the discussion that we need to have about how this impacts our everyday life. Let's go to a commercial break, but when we return, we'd like to look further into the discussion about wrong and right and how it impacts our lives.
New Life Celebration Christian Academy, the right choice for developing tomorrow's leaders. New Life is registering students from 3 to 14 years of age now for their fall academic program. Full and part-time rates are available. DCFS and DHS Action for Children vouchers are accepted. Family rates available also. Enroll now by calling 708-849-2787. Our program offers high standards for curriculum, character development, Christian discipleship, physical education, student computer lab, Spanish, arts and crafts, and more. New Life Celebration Christian Academy, conveniently located at 14243 South Dante in Dalton, Illinois. Register now, 708-849-2787. 708-849-2787. New Life Celebration Christian Academy. We're growing leaders here.
Trinity has had a dedication to the Chicago students for the last 30 years or so.
All kinds of arenas of life are engaged in this kind of setting.
We take the centrality of the gospel and ask, how does it speak into urban realities?
We have younger students as well as people who are already professionals, and they come here to enhance their Christian education or their theological education.
Thank you for tuning in. We are now continuing to look at the issues of right and wrong. We were discussing about actions that people can take here with John Feinberg. Right now we're going to be taking a look at the impacts of what does this mean when it has to do with the taking of one's life, like euthanasia. What comes to bear? What can you share with us about this discussion going on about life and death at the end of life decisions?
Well, Mike, the thing that we have to understand is that depending on your beliefs as to what's right and what's wrong, you'll have one answer or another answer as to whether to end a life when someone is greatly in pain. For example, if you decide what's right and wrong on the basis of the results of actions, you will say, well, my relative is on life support machines, they're suffering, they're not likely to get any better. What is the point of continuing them on this life support? I can remove them from pain, we can stop the drain of money to pay for this kind of care. All of those things relate to the positive results that would happen if we terminated their life. And for a lot of people in our societies today, if you get the results that you would like, then that means that the way you got those results, what you did to get them, is morally acceptable. On the other hand, there's a very different approach to this kind of issue, and it comes out of the approach that says something other than consequences or results is what makes an action morally right or wrong. For example, someone who bases their ethics on Scripture will look for some kind of biblical principle that would cover a situation like this. And the one that is most relevant is the biblical teaching that it is not right to take innocent life. Now, clearly the person who is suffering is uncomfortable, and there's great pain for the family as they watch this happen, but none of that is any sort of crime that's been committed by the person who's terminally ill. There's nothing that they are doing or have done that would warrant or allow someone to end their life. And because Scripture says it is not morally acceptable to take innocent life, that should be what governs our decision in this case. It's not that biblical ethics is unsympathetic to the pain that the family and the patient is experiencing. It's just that we don't make our ethical decisions on the grounds of how bad someone feels, how expensive their care is, or anything of that sort. We make it on the basis of what is morally right and wrong to do according to what Scripture requires us.
It does seem, though, I mean, when you think about that, John, it does seem a little insensitive when we start thinking about issues, not only euthanasia, but also abortion. Here's a young lady, she's only 16 years old, or she's pregnant. This is going to impact the rest of her life. And so maybe perhaps the way that she got pregnant was with somebody that she really didn't care about. And now you're saying that she should suffer the consequences of this the rest of her life, to sustain life and not make her life more comfortable by the termination of this pregnancy. Would you be saying that?
Well, what I want to suggest is that the issue is complicated by a number of factors. Depending on the circumstance, this may be a case where the woman is pregnant as a result of having sex with someone before she's married. Scripture is clear that that is not to be done, and yet it was done, and even though the result of that was not for the woman to get pregnant, she has become pregnant. Now, for someone then to say, because it would be inconvenient for her to go through with this pregnancy and to have to raise this child for the next 18 years, and probably alone, since maybe she had sex with someone who's a stranger and he's not going to be around, because of all of that, it's okay to get rid of that baby. But hang on just a moment. The rule that it's not morally permissible to take innocent life applies to the baby who's in that mother's womb. And if she takes the life of that baby that's in her womb, then what she's really doing is complicating one sin by adding another. The first sin was having sex with someone to whom she wasn't married. Now, to get rid of the negative consequences that she didn't want, she's contemplating doing something further that would be a second sin. Now, if we were approaching ethics from the standpoint that says the only thing that matters is getting the results that I like, and in the first case, it was enjoyable to have sex, so that made it okay to do this, even though it was sex among people who were not married, and we weren't anticipating that there would be a pregnancy, and a pregnancy would be inconvenient, and we can get rid of that result. And so, look, we got the result we wanted when we had sex relations. That is, we enjoyed having sex relations. And we're going to get the results when it comes to whether we have to keep this baby or not. Well, there are those who would make moral decisions on the grounds of biblical principles who would say, isn't this a perfect example of saying that the ends do justify the means? As long as I get the result that I want, then how I get that result doesn't matter. Christian ethics, biblical ethics says, no, it does matter.
Wow.
You have to obey the rules no matter how uncomfortable or comfortable they may be.
Well, these have been choices that people have made. They're free choices that have allowed them to enter into places that have complicated their lives, and they'd like to make it more comfortable by terminating something in their life. But what about when we look at the issues of homosexuality? Many people would find this is a discussion that doesn't have to do with choice at all, that people are simply born this way and therefore should be protected as race, as gender is protected, and they should fall in that classification. Why is it that you, or what would you see as being the answer to that question when this group of people don't or may not really have a choice?
Well, Mike, you are raising what I think is an extremely important topic. And it's important because I believe that in our culture today, those who want to foster and support a gay or lesbian lifestyle have attempted to, if I can put it this way, brainwash our society into believing that the case that they're making for legitimizing homosexuality and lesbianism is the same kind of case that was made in the 60s in favor of civil rights, and then a couple of decades later.
John, this is, right now, we're at a place where I think that the audience has to pay great attention to what you're saying. We're going to go to a commercial break for a moment, but we'll need to return after this commercial break and continue this discussion on what is placing us and our society in a position to say yes. Is it because it's right, or it's because we want it to be right? Trinity has had a dedication to the Chicago students for the last 30 years or so.
All kinds of arenas of life are engaged in this kind of setting.
We take the centrality of the gospel and ask, how does it speak into urban realities?
We have younger students as well as people who are already professionals, and they come here to enhance their Christian education or their theological education.
Thank you for tuning in to A Taste of Trinity. We're here talking about ethics, Christian ethics in particular, with John Feinberg. He was just discussing with us and explained to us scientific evidence, or the lack thereof, going along with the issues of homosexuality. John, could you give some closing statements to that will give a more full feeling for what people can do to struggle through that issue?
Sure. Thanks, Mike, for giving me this other opportunity. What I really want to emphasize is that there has been a lot of biological and genetic testing that scientists have been done. And it's not that these scientists are evangelical Christians. In fact, many of them are very positive to homosexuality and lesbianism. So they would like to be able to prove that there is a biological or a genetic link. The point that I was making is that at least so far, no one has been able to come even close to proving that these kinds of sexual orientations are caused by either genetics or biology. Now, that doesn't mean that the testing and the scientific attempts to prove that there's a genetic link have stopped. I'm sure that there's plenty of research that's going on, but the problem that I see is many people in our society believe that it's already a proven fact that people have whatever their sexual orientation is because of something biological or genetic. And so far, including the people who've done the studies, those who really know what the evidence is know that that's not been proved.
Wow. Well, we're talking about genetics right now, knowing that you have an affirming sense toward the issues of people who are struggling with the issues of homosexuality. And this isn't a personal agenda, but it's a biblical presentation so that people do know right and wrong. And so it takes us to the discussion about the issues of genetics and what role it plays when scientists get involved with engineering. And so what's at risk when a scientist engage in engineering with our genetics makeup?
Well, a lot is going to depend on the specific practice that you're talking about. There are certain things, such as using genetics to correct some kind of genetic defect that gives someone a horrible disease. I think most of us would say that use of genetic engineering, we applaud it. We are very excited that we're living at a time that such things are happening.
Wow.
But on the other hand, the same kind of technology that can be used to change a genetic code to heal someone can also be changed in a way that gives them a certain trait which somebody feels is superior to the traits they already have. So, for example, if you're someone who believes that people who are blonde and blue-eyed have more fun, and you don't have either of those characteristics, and you find that you could get those characteristics if there was just a manipulating of your genetic code, well, I trust that all of us would see that's a different kind of use of this technology than going in genetically to make a genetic change that's going to cure someone from a horrible disease.
So a rebirth of eugenics gone wild, you might say, huh?
Yes, people talk about designer genes, and they mean that both literally and figuratively in just about every sense of the word.
I can see how the issues of ethics go into just all kind of areas. And you've kind of explained to us today how the biblical text can speak to all these issues that are out there. But you know and I know that the question of right and wrong isn't going to end with today's issues. Yeah. But there are many things on the front that are coming up. Where do you think that ethics is going to go in the future, and where are Christians going to have to speak to those issues? Can you kind of give me just a laundry list of 2 or 3 things?
Well, I think I can, and I think I can also make a more general statement. I think that we should expect that any issue that might arise in terms of human behavior, human activity, where the behavior is different from, even contradictory of biblical morality, that kind of issue, that kind of behavior, that kind of activity, there are going to be people in our culture today who are going to push for people to do those sorts of things, to think that way, just because it's non-biblical. What we have to realize is that we are not living in an America anymore where there is a general moral consensus around Judeo-Christian morality.
Wow.
And it's not as though there are some people who hold that and the rest of the culture is ignorant of it. No, some people hold the Judeo-Christian mindset. Other people are ignorant, but there's a whole lot of other people in society who are aware of the Judeo-Christian approach, and they are adamantly angry at it. They are determined to get rid of it. And so any kind of issue that arises where Scripture would require one kind of action, one type of thinking, there are people in our society who are going to make a point to do just the opposite. Wow. Now, having said that in general, I do think the issue of homosexuality is not going to go away. There's too much at stake, not only politically, but economically. I mean, look, if a gay couple has all the rights and privileges that a heterosexual couple has when they're married, well, some of those rights and privileges are financial. Yes. You know this isn't going to go away. It's understandable. Right. Well, suppose the whole nation, you might say, eventually legalizes gay marriage. Well, don't think that that will be the end of sexual issues. The next thing is likely going to be trying to legitimize bisexual orientation, transgender. I mean, things are happening in our news media where, and in our entertainment industry, where more and more we are seeing people in movies, in TV dramas or comedies who are transgender or any other sort of activity of that sort that's unusual. And I think a lot of this is being done to get the American people to be used to the idea that, you know, these people are different, but different is okay. So I think that's going to happen. We have just recently also seen that a scientist here in the U.S., I don't remember all the details, but I think within the last few weeks he did succeed in cloning a portion of a human being. So I can expect that that's something that we're likely to see pursued.
Well,
If you do that cloning, you can grow another organ or another part of a person and harvest the organs from that person to heal someone who is ill. The possibilities are almost endless.
wow. John, you've opened up the doors for us to look into a lot about Christian ethics. And I want to thank you for doing that on today.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity. Always great to be with you, Mike.
This has been a great time that we've been able to share on the subject of Christian ethics. It's been a lot of discussion, and there's a lot more to look at on this particular topic. But if you'd like to come and sit in a classroom where you can learn more about Christian ethics, then we have a location, that is Trinity International University, at 14240 Dante Avenue in Dalton, Illinois. We'd love to see you come and be in our classrooms and go ahead and look deeper into the questions of what's wrong and what's right. Please join us again as we continue to look into topics that are affecting the lives of everyday Christians on A Taste of Trinity.
New Life Celebration Christian Academy, the right choice for developing tomorrow's leaders. New Life is registering students from 3 to 14 years of age now for their fall academic program. Full and part-time rates are available. DCFS and DHS Action for Children vouchers are accepted. Family rates available also. Enroll now by calling 708-849-2787. Our program offers high standards for curriculum, character development, Christian discipleship, physical education, student computer lab, Spanish, arts and crafts, and more. New Life Celebration Christian Academy, conveniently located at 14243 South Dante in Dalton, Illinois. Register now, 708-849-2787. 708-849-2787. New Life Celebration Christian Academy. We're growing leaders.